Hello and welcome to the Ella Monster Nerdy Moment. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Brad Hathcock. Welcome back. It's been a
Welcome
week.
back. Yes, it has. Brad, I want to open this episode with a small monologue. I want to thank all of our viewers on YouTube, but particularly TikTok. I heard that there were a lot of people who were either upset at our opinions or didn't like our equipment. And I just want to say, keep sending us those hate comments. I want them all, please.
We thrive on hate here. This is what we do. You should see the toxic fucking group chat that we have. I'm sure the FBI and the CIA already have it. They could probably release it and destroy us, but we're nobodies, so it doesn't really matter. My favorite thing is people calling me uneducated when I'm actually highly educated. Just because you don't like my political opinions, doesn't mean I'm uneducated. Chances are you aren't educated on politics. And anybody who's honestly standing up for either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris are uneducated when it comes to politics, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, so anyway, all of you out there who decide like I gotta let these guys give them a piece of my mind, just know that we don't give a fuck, but I encourage you to continue to post because we don't read the comments, but you know,
oh, I do. No, I do. I love the hate. It doesn't, a lot of people will say they get like depressed from the comments or it like makes them feel bad. I don't. I literally don't give a fuck what anybody has to think of me or what they say. You and I do this podcast for fun, not for funds, and we just enjoy it. So keep the hate coming. I don't really care. We are starting to get more followers and things like that, which I appreciate. We're always plugging the pod the best we can. We could is there anything we could do better? Give us that kind of feedback, sure, because we'll do something better. But you know what we're not going to do is change our political opinions because you fucking morons think that we're wrong. So you're entitled to that opinion. This is America. That's what makes America great now.
I'm glad we got that little bit of house cleaning out of the way. So let's move on to the matters of the day, the hour, the week. 11 days until the election. Really interesting stuff going on. I think that the Democrats are panicking. I tell you this because we started out at JD Vance is weird, so they were weird. Then we got to let's see, Donald Trump is losing it. Maybe he's a little senile. We got a little bit of like I don't know what, like, oh, he's tired. He's not doing enough events. He's a little bit tired. We've now moved into he's Hitler with 11 days out. I think that they are realizing that they might be a little fucked. Thoughts on
I
that?
mean, I guess to be fair, they've kind of been calling him Hitler for quite a while. I
Oh,
think
but
even prior to the 2016 election, they were calling him Hitler. So,
I must add one thing to this. There's one detail. He is going to be at Madison Square Garden tomorrow, and I don't know if you know this, but there was a Nazi rally at like 3 buildings ago, Madison Square Garden in 1939, and they're saying that this is going to be a Nazi-esque gathering. Which, yeah, that's desperation, is it not?
yeah, Hillary Clinton came out on Twitter, which is really when she's commenting on what is going on in politics today. You just have to take that for Democrats are fucking losing and they need help. So you try to get help from the fucking person who lost to Donald Trump in the first place. That's not smart. But yeah, she came out and said that, oh, he's trying to have a rally in New York, just like I forget I forget who did it in the late 40s or something, like after Hitler or something. Um, and they've been trying to make this comparison to him being Hitler and Republicans being Nazis for the longest fucking time, lest we forget that the Democrats invented the Ku Klux Klan. So let's keep our racism in check here, right? But you're right. They started off calling JD Vance weird, and while I am not that big of a JD Vance supporter, he at least speaks his mind pretty well. Wears I'm pretty sure he wears fucking eyeliner, which is weird.
No,
When
no.
he's
It's a double eyelash.
nobody's eyes are that fucking,
It's the
that lined
blue.
up, okay, naturally. No way. I disagree with that. But I mean, I guess if you're looking for him being a Nazi, already kind of is Aryan-esque, right? So I guess you have that going for you in that regard. But uh, yeah, we're just seeing this because they are absolutely desperate. Desperate. The polls are showing like a 50-50 split, basically. There are morons that are out there on TikTok doing their own like debates saying that like Kamala Harris is going to win all 50 states. That's never going to happen ever in your life. So get that out of your mind right fucking now. And everything's just in this like odd state. I mean, they are stumping really hard in Pennsylvania right now because it's said, but this is said about like multiple other states. I think they said this about Wisconsin too, that basically whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to win the election.
Yeah.
But there's like one small county in like Wisconsin that it's like every president who's ever won has won that county. So they're trying to say if you win, I think it's like literally like Door County or some shit in like Wisconsin. Like if you win Door County, Wisconsin, you're going to win the election. Like everybody wants to get their piece and be like, well, we're the most important part of this election. And quite frankly, all of you can go fuck yourselves. Nobody's that important. It all does come down to the Electoral College. And, we're going to see what happens. I'm honestly predicting Trump in a landslide, but
A
you kind of never
landslide?
know. I do, yeah. I think he's actually going to run away with it. We'll see. He's supposed
Uh,
to be on Joe Rogan's podcast today, but they haven't released the date on which that podcast comes out. But he is there today, doing Joe Rogan's podcast. But I do think that he's going to run away with it. Kamala Harris went into CNN and did a town hall and was supposed to be her like this is my final word kind of thing,
uh-huh.
and she failed miserably. But everyone on the left, I went to the doctor today for a knee issue I'm having, and The View was on, so I'm sitting
Oh,
there in the waiting room having to listen to this horse shit. And they're like, she answered all the questions and it was like good. She never answers a fucking question. If you listen to what she says, and like, the left has been trying to make out this like word salad thing, right? Like, because
uh-huh.
the right is labeling it all word salad, which I also do. But they're sitting here saying, like, well, they aren't articulate enough to understand what she's saying, and that she's just very smart, and like, that's why they think it's word salad. Uh, I am smart enough to know what she's saying, and I can fucking tell you that it is nothing. There's no modicum of truth to what she's saying, and it literally she talks herself in circles.
It's interesting because I saw the same sort of comments about her nuance, and I think that if the bar for you is that she strings together words, and she doesn't say she just kind of says like a thing. If you think that might be convincing to some people, honestly, everybody on the left seems convinced by it. They're like, oh, she's great, man. Just look at her answers right there. She just said
Yeah,
we
well,
can't go back. We got to go forward, and we can't do the
right,
back for the forward. And it's like,
absolutely, and that makes sense. But that only makes sense what she's saying when you compare it to Joe Biden, who's out there going. That's it. That's the only way you can find what she's saying is coherent. And don't get me wrong, Donald Trump flies off the handle and says like wacky, weird shit. But look at, like you said, they're breaking down. Like he went and did the McDonald's thing, okay, which
yeah.
was fucking iconic and hilarious.
It looked
Okay,
like a Norman Rockwell
straight
painting.
troll.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When he was outside the drive-through window and he had his red tie on,
he's like, like
and he's
waving.
just
He's like,
yeah, it looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. So
they are shitting bricks right now, like to
yeah,
the point where they were even tweeting like, oh well, after Donald Trump appeared at McDonald's, their stock took like a 1.75% hit, and it's like,
I looked at that.
okay,
It did a bounce.
like,
It didn't go down.
sure, it happens all the time. I mean, like, the markets get manipulated constantly by politics, like in either direction, really. So like you make an announcement, we see it with Musk, and you know how like crypto is going up and down based off of, oh, I'm gonna go on Saturday Night Live and talk about Shib coin or whatever, and then he goes on and completely like clowns it. And you know, you just see obviously like ebbs and flows, like it happens constantly.
So before we leave the McDonald's thing, I want to spend a little more time on it because I had a conversation with somebody who lacks uh, the creative thought process on this topic. They said to me, well, "I don't get it. All he did was work at McDonald's, at a fake McDonald's, for like half an hour. That it was staged." And I said, "You don't understand what that image did for people who aren't you, for people who are younger, who maybe work at McDonald's or they used to work at McDonald's. And, you know, it's like this job that's sort of a stereotype. 1 in 5 people in America, first job is McDonald's." And he was like, it was really interesting because he loves McDonald's. He's always loved McDonald's. He was fucking fascinated by the fry machine, which I thought was hilarious. He did the little like superstitious thing where he had salt. He's like, "Oh, gotta throw the salt over the shoulder." Like he was, yeah, he was saying like,
That was my favorite part. Yeah,
yeah,
that was my favorite part.
he said the human hand never touches the fries. Like he was like fascinated by this, and it was like really authentic. Which, you know, it was like, I'm not saying he's like the greatest guy ever. I'm just saying like that image is like a top 5 image for me. In a year where he's got a mug shot, in a year where he got shot in the head, him in that drive-through window was iconic. And I think people, they're just like, "Oh, he doesn't really work there, or that was not a real McDonald." You know, it's like, no shit, but it
Well,
worked.
yeah. So here's the thing, okay? When you have a celebrity slash former president slash president, whatever, of course it's fucking staged. He's not just showing up to McDonald's and be like, "Here's my application," you know, because some McDonald's do hire for you to start that day. Like, he didn't do that. Okay, like, do you have any idea how much shit needs to be cleared to secure an area? Especially because Congress did pass to actually give him more uh, Secret Service security to cover him because of obviously the assassination attempts and stuff.
3 of
So,
them.
right, do you know what has to be fucking cleared for that? Like, I had a neighbor who worked as a prison guard, and he had an opportunity to go play golf with George Bush, and it took like 6 or 7 months for them to pass him through like all the background checks and shit that he had to go through to play golf with George Bush.
Same
Like,
thing with going to the White
it's not
House. Like it wasn't an easy
right.
thing.
Like, you don't just fucking show up to McDonald's and do that when you're Donald Trump. So of course it was fucking staged. And these people who were like sitting here saying, "Well, they weren't even real customers." Why then tell me, if it was so fucking staged, why was one of the customers being like, "Well, what did you know it's Kamala Harris's birthday today? Why don't you debate her again?" If it's actually staged, they're not going to allow that person in to ask that fucking question.
Yeah, which, by the way, we should note that Kamala Harris has pre-screened questions at her town hall, or whatever town hall she was with Maria Shriver, where Maria Shriver was like,
Yeah,
you can't ask her. No, sorry, we have pre-screen. Like, you can't do
right.
that."
So someone from the crowd said, "Oh, can we ask questions?" And they're like, "No, we have pre-approved questions that will be asked." And then I might ask whatever's on your minds, which is total fucking bullshit. Like, this election, as we all know, is fucking terrible. Okay, it is it worse than 2016? Is it worse than 2020? Maybe.
I think 2020 gets the edge because of COVID and the year of the racial reckoning, but
Yeah,
just a little
but
edge.
it's kind of funny because like early and mail-in voting were really big, obviously for 2020, especially to swing towards Democrats. But we're seeing right now, I think in Pennsylvania, more people are voting early
In
and
Georgia
doing
too.
mail-in ballots, and they're falling towards Republicans.
In Georgia as
So
well. Yep.
it's whatever Republicans have done to get out that mail-in voting, which they always called fraudulent, they must have changed their tune on that, obviously. Seems to be working for them.
Yeah, there's I saw some number that maybe it was like 30% more people are voting in Georgia early, and it's like this was the state where everybody said it was Jim Crow 2.0 there because they wouldn't let them hand out bottled water or whatever. And so it's really funny to see that like all that talking point went away, but it's because it's voter suppression. So okay,
You
let's
know,
move
one of the
away.
funny,
Oh yeah,
well, you know, one of the funny things I do want to say, like about this particular election here is, Kamala Harris keeps saying, "I'm going to have a Republican in my cabinet. I'm going to have a Republican in my cabinet." They always talk about that, like that. Oh, she's going to reach across the aisle. Donald Trump already has two prominent Democrats backing him, stumping for him, rallying for him, who will take cabinet positions for him. Like, he's basically going to make RFK Jr. whatever director of fucking health, or maybe the head of the NIH or something like that. I don't know, who fucking knows? But he's got that, and he's got Tulsi Gabbard in his corner. Now everyone's gonna be like, "Well, they're Republicans." No, no, they were not. They were never fucking Republicans until Democrats tried to fucking cast them out
they
because
still
they
aren't.
were too fringe, too fringe.
They haven't really changed their views. Like Tulsi Gabbard is still anti-war. JFK is RFK, sorry, is still anti fast food or whatever the fuck he like. They haven't changed what they believe. I don't
No, they
know.
haven't. What they I and again, politicians lie, especially Donald Trump lies, but he has said, like, when I didn't really expect to win the first time, and I didn't know how to govern when I got in there. And I've learned some lessons, and I don't want to like do that again. I ended up increasing the swamp, which I agree with, John Bolton and all those characters. Um, which now I think it's John Kelly, is that his name?
Yeah,
Uh, who came out and it was the one who was saying that, Trump, that whole Hitler comment about, like, my generals should be like the generals Hitler had and stuff
yeah.
like that, which has been debunked by every single person in that room except for John Kelly.
And that
Um,
Atlantic article was incredibly dishonest because they not only did people come out afterwards and say the people you were saying are in the room, they were like, "This didn't happen," and you're also like kind of denigrating the life of my dead sister or whatever. It was the sister, and Jeffrey
oh yeah,
Goldberg, who basically published the article, he's like the guy who runs the Atlantic, goes on CNN and pretends like it's all just accurate anyway, and that was like a day later. It didn't stick, by the way. It's not going to stick because they're running out of things to hit it with. They had a woman who was like, he touched me inappropriately 32 years ago, and she's like this 79-year-old woman, or what? It's like, what? Like, you guys have vetted this guy for 8 years, whatever, longer than that, and it's there's nothing left. You've tapped out.
well, he's the definition of the Teflon Don. Like, they've been calling him that. Like, he is that. He very much is that. And while I'm definitely not a supporter, and I know this election cycle definitely seems like we're more in Trump's corner, but it's because the way that Democrats are really handling things this time around, it's so disgusting. Like,
They
with what
replaced
they're
Biden.
doing,
They pushed
right?
him
Like,
out.
which, the Republicans are rightly calling out that it's a soft coup, basically, to push him out, because then Kamala Harris, to her nature of fucking up interviews, goes on to say, like, that there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden and that he's everything that you would want in a sitting president and all this other stuff. And the host goes, "But that's why you're here,
Yeah,
because he can't do the job, and
that was a
he's
good
not,
moment.
yeah, he has no, like, does not have the mental acuity to run again. That's why you're here, and you're still going to back him." So she's actually gone back to the talking points of him being coherent, when the whole reason she's even running is the fact that everybody finally came out and said he's not coherent. So, like, which is it?
Can we
So
talk about?
she's
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
She's stuck in this situation, right, where she like doesn't want to denigrate her party in any way by saying he's bad, but that's the whole reason why she's here in the first place. And she's saying, well, there would be nothing different between me and Joe Biden, but you're also sitting here saying the like that nothing is working and everything's broken and you're going to fix it, but you're the one there breaking it in the first place. So like what the fuck is it? Doesn't jibe with anything else. So like I think she's really shot herself in the foot, which good.
We would be derelict in our duty if we didn't discuss the ads, because I can't get away from these things on during football every single
Dude, try
break.
being in Pennsylvania.
Oh, I'm sure it's even worse. Yeah. But I want to talk about the ads because there's two things that are important here. One, all of the three senatorial candidates who are Democrats who are running in the swing states. Um, Bob Casey's your guy. Is he in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania? Um,
For the
they
record, he's not my guy.
No, he's not your guy. But they're running ads where they're, and this is really telling. They're not putting Kamala Harris in their ads. They're putting Donald Trump in their ads, and they're saying we reached across the aisle and we worked with Donald Trump. And I think that's really important because literally Hitler is in three senatorial ads. The other ad I want to talk about, two of them, are the Trump ads because those have been incredibly effective, and they don't feature him talking at all. They feature Kamala Harris talking. And all it is her saying prison inmates, transgender surgery, immigrants, whatever that one was. And then the other one was her saying on The View that she would not change anything from the Biden presidency. And these two ads are very effective, and they are her talking her own words. And
Hmm.
I think it's important to note that that might be something that might be an effective thing. She's outspent him
He
in my
doesn't
ads.
right. He doesn't even have to campaign against her. Really, she's campaigning against herself.
That's a good
Like
point. Yeah.
because she every time she has a gaffe, which is becoming more and more prominent, the more and more she's actually doing, which is why they hid her away in the fucking first place for the last 3.5 years, so that she'd shut her mouth. And now that like she's front and center, she's making a mockery of herself, and it's really hurting Democrats. And you're right, they aren't really pushing those kinds of things. But what Republicans are pushing about like Bob Casey is the fact that like, and this one's huge, was, they're talking about the COVID relief funds, which massive amounts of like fraud. People are starting to get arrested 4 years after the fact for unemployment fraud during COVID and all this other stuff, which is actually really hilarious. But Bob Casey voted to give that like the stimulus money to inmates in prisons, and one of the people who received that money was the Boston Marathon bomber. And so one of the ads that's
No
here in
shit.
Pennsylvania, yeah, one of the ads that's here in Pennsylvania specifically mentions that he voted to give inmates that money, including the Boston Marathon bomber. They call it out specifically, and they show the kid, they show the bomber on a video, like in front of a camera, like doing some fucking like weird shit, like something that they might have caught of him in like a street in Boston or something like that. So they're really targeting these ads against Bob Casey, whereas I believe who he's running against is Dan McCormick.
Yeah.
And uh, their whole thing about Dan McCormick is like, oh well, he's gonna like, big business, and he's owned his own company that taught other companies how to ship jobs overseas and all this other stuff, which is smart, targeting those ads, if that's the, a thing that you care about, which most people should and do. So you can see like kind of how diametrically opposed it is in that regard.
Wow, that is crazy. I didn't know about this ad. That is wild and wildly
It's
effective.
big in Pennsylvania, just obviously because it's Bob Casey, so you're not going to see them on like a national ad. It's more of like a
Right.
state kind of run thing, but
Yeah, that's a damning indictment of Bob
it's
Casey.
pretty damning. I mean, because like I said, they even showed the kid's face, who was the Boston Marathon bomber.
Yeah, I forget his
So,
fucking name.
um,
I don't want to remember his name, but um wow, okay. So so we got the ads part out of the way. Very important part of this. Now let's talk about Rogan, because One other thing that's kind of been coming out from all the polls and also from the early vote, which I don't know how they do this, but there are people, they somehow have numbers that say that Hispanics and blacks, or specifically males, are voting for Trump in the early ballots. I don't know how they know the race. That's kind of like weird to me, but I don't understand it. I haven't looked into it. And Trump has been going on Rogan, he went on Schultz, he went on Theo Vaughn, and there's this like subculture. See, the left controls everything, right? Like she's got Beyonce, she's got Bruce Springsteen. Well, young men, actually me included, actually, because I listen to all these podcasts too. These are like a whole other thing where like Joe Rogan has like 190 million downloads on Spotify every month, and they don't seem to be aware of this because they own academia, they own the media, they own the blah 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 Hollywood, and Trump is going on all these other podcasts and he's reaching the male vote. It might be the first time in maybe 40 years where like it's like the women are going to vote for Democrats and males are going to vote for Republicans, and I think that they just missed it, and now it's coming out, and that's why they're kind of freaking out because they're seeing that Trump is going to just dominate with males of all races.
Yeah,
Thoughts on
I
that?
think it's pretty funny. So Andrew Schultz, he did this podcast with Trump. I listened to it. I told you Trump actually sounded like a normal person. He wasn't spouting out like crazy shit like he does at his rallies or whatever, like on TV. It was very like controlled, not in the sense that like they limited what they were asking him. They did ask him questions about like IVF, which Andrew Schultz had his baby through IVF. So he said, like, this is very important to me and everything. And Donald Trump was like, we wouldn't get rid of IVF, which makes sense because Republicans want more babies. So why you would stop somebody from having IVF so they can have a baby, just like that doesn't logically make sense. Um, Tell me if I'm getting that wrong, like in what, the Democrats are trying to push about the IVF thing. Um,
Well, it's a
but
Project 2025, but the
right.
thing is that maybe was a little bit effective because they took the ideas from that, even though he claims he never read it. I never read it. Nobody ever read it. And they kind of got that into the culture a little bit where it's like, this is one of their plans. But it never really was a thing that he endorsed. He didn't try to like ban IVF. I don't even understand it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, so obviously the Schultz podcast comes out, and there wasn't as much backlash from the Theo Vaughn podcast because he's a little goofy.
It was just
Um,
funny. Yeah.
yeah, he's a little goofy. But Andrew Schultz actually did ask him some like harder questions and
It
stuff,
was a
and
great interview.
um, it was a really good interview. And then the right came out and was like, this is who Donald Trump really is. He's, a family man, like all this other stuff. This looks great for him. And the left came out and was like, comedian laughs in Donald Trump's face during interview. And that was not true. So Andrew Schultz's next podcast after that one was him
Huh.
coming out and saying, we were not laughing in his face. Like he was like the media is making it out to seem like we are laughing at him, and they were like, that's not true. We were laughing because things he said were funny, and that's why we were laughing. Like we weren't laughing at like him or what he was saying necessarily, like, but what he said was funny. So Andrew Schultz pretty much, he was like, I was fairly undecided until Trump came on the podcast, and he's like, and then it was the way the left was spinning that interview, stating that like we're laughing in his face, that solidified it for me. He was like, I'm voting for Trump.
Oh,
Because
wow.
he was like, I can't stand this shit. Like we weren't laughing at him. But one of the other key things is Andrew Schultz treated Donald Trump in a more respectful manner. Like I guess he was like, oh, his team was like, wrap it up, and Andrew Schultz was like, don't even look at them. We wrap this up when Donald Trump wants to wrap this up,
Yeah.
and we'll keep going. And he talked about like, I wanted to like leave out specific talking points from the left or from the right and ask him things that actually matter to me, like as a voter and stuff, because he's like, I don't want there to be any kind of like, you know, um, flipping or something about this interview saying like I did this or that, or I was too easy or hard on him or whatever. He's like, so I asked him questions that meant something to me. And he was very adamant about his crew doing the same thing. And it
They
really
did.
came through in that
Yeah.
podcast.
Well, his crew asked adversarial questions. I mean, obviously they weren't all like aligned ideologically. I do want to mention as well that this Rogan interview is not a it's not in the bag for Trump, because Rogan goes all over the place. He doesn't, he could say anything and then Trump has to answer it, and Trump could get himself in trouble. We don't know yet. I'm really interested in that one the most, because Rogan just will say anything. But I want to say that the Andrew Schultz audience will never see the media's reaction to it, because nobody watches the media. So they're not the same audience. And I think that's really interesting that he came out and said, like, I wasn't laughing in his face. And the audience of Andrew Schultz will hear that. And,
Right.
CNN can spin it however they want, but nobody's watching CNN.
I think that Rogan has a lot to lose from this interview. I truly feel that way, because people have long been calling for Rogan to basically moderate a debate between him and Kamala Harris and so on and so forth. And like they want to see that happen. And he does have a knack for asking some like difficult questions. We have to remember he has had politicians on before. He had Tulsi Gabbard on. He had Bernie Sanders on. He had Larry Sharp on, who is a libertarian candidate, not now, but he was back then.
Dan
Um,
Crenshaw.
Dan Crenshaw. He's had plenty of politicians on across the board. And Rogan has been a big advocate for Bernie Sanders, saying he would vote for him. Joe Rogan does believe in universal basic income. Like, I know
Rogan
people who are like,
endorsed
Joe
Tulsi
Rogan's
Gabbard.
not a progressive, but like he is. Like, a lot of the things he believes is progressive, minus guns. Like, so, but you can have some progressive ideals, you can have some conservative ideals. Like, you can't, that's why you shouldn't label people in one direction. But that's also why he has so much to lose in this podcast with Trump. Because if he doesn't rein him in and ask him the harder questions and things like that, now, who knows how long it's going to be? Obviously, Rogan's podcasts are historically 2 to 3 hours long. So who knows how long this one's actually going to be? But
Well, Trump
he's
is
got
the
more
guy
to
who likes.
lose than win in this.
So let me point this out. Trump can talk for 3 hours about anything, probably. I mean, he could sit down with us and he'd probably have a conversation with us. I would just ask him about the fries, like what. But Kamala Harris declined the Rogan interview, and I think that's really telling, because she can't talk for 3 hours about anything. So it just, I don't know, man. It's just really
So
interesting.
I did say in our toxic group chat that Rogan has a lot to lose for a Kamala interview too, for the same exact reasons. If he doesn't take her to task and just softballs everything to her, not that she doesn't fuck those up, but like he needs to ask her actual hard questions and hold her accountable for things, and he needs to do the same thing for Trump. Now, the reason why Trump doesn't come on this podcast is because we're going to ask him stupid questions like, did you eat some of the fries after you dumped
What's
them
your
into the
favorite
thing?
order at McDonald's?
Right. Because I have worked at a McDonald's and a Burger King, and I will tell you, I used to dip into those fucking fries
Oh, Brad.
constantly. Just reach in there, grab a couple, shove them in your face, and go back to work.
Brad,
But
I
I
got
want to know if he did
psyoped.
that.
In our group chat, I mentioned that I got psyoped. I had McDonald's on Tuesday. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and then
I
now you
wanted
got
those
the whole
fries.
listeria outburst. What
Outbreak.
is that?
The onions. The onions had E. coli from a farm
Ah, it was the
in.
onions.
Yes, but I'm fine, Brad. I'm fine. I feel great.
For now. Is there a gestational period there?
I haven't looked into it because I'm fine.
It's okay. I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but I'm going to fucking say it anyway. I would rather get E. coli from eating McDonald's than eat In-N-Out Burger. I'll say it.
We're gonna
Fucking
move
In-N-Out
on.
Burger.
We're gonna move on from that. I don't want to look. We get we get a lot of negative comments, but I don't want to get any In-N-Out haters because I love In-N-Out. Just so we're clear, I love In-N-Out. I'll take it over McDonald's any day. But those fries at McDonald's are sick.
This
They're
might
great.
be that might be the most watched clip we ever get, hating on In and Out.
Yeah, you can't do
And I'm
that.
gonna get so much hate, and I look forward to it. So bring it on.
I love In-N-Out. Okay, where do we go from there? I don't even know where to go. We covered all the politics angles. It's 11 days, so we may or may not record before. We should probably record before the election. Um, but then election night, we might not get results for like another couple days. I think they said in Georgia it might take like 4 days, in Arizona like 8. I don't know.
Well, so one of the things that was interesting of why you might not see results out of Georgia for a while was that they tried to pass a law that you had to hand count every vote. That was actually shut down by their state Supreme Court.
Can I just say
So
that I think
that's a no go.
the hand count thing, I think is actually like, I get it. I get why the right wants hand counting. That's just not practical. Like you can't hold up the entire country because your dumb state doesn't want to use like a machine to count ballots. I get why they want to do that, but I, I guess I'm kind of against that, you know?
Yeah, I think I am as well, especially in a digital age. I mean, realistically, we should have online voting, but at the same time, we're
Wow.
not exactly great at national cybersecurity here in this country, apparently. So, uh, I see why it's a huge problem. But we also should have voter ID. I don't care. Anybody who says voter ID is racist, you're full of shit. Uh, Pretty much like every first world country has voter ID laws except for the United States. And everybody wants to point to fucking Canada and European countries and all this other shit. They all have voter ID laws. So get fucked.
Um, Voter ID for me is not an issue. I don't think you should have voter ID. I think you should have identification at voting. So like if you have like a driver's license, I think that should be good enough. But I'm not opposed to it at all. It seems like to me common
Right. But the
sense.
left will say, well, minorities have trouble getting IDs.
Yeah, they do that
That's
all
a
the
lie.
time.
That's a lie. And if that is a problem, then maybe you like to fucking spend money on everything else. Maybe you should spend money on opening more places where they can get IDs.
You mean like a
Like
DMV?
Kamala Harris basically said like, "Oh, well, minorities can't like fax things."
Which is a
Why?
wild thing to say. Like to
Right.
reference a
Like
facsimile machine right now, like wow.
go to
Um
Kinko's. Does that even still exist? Kinko's?
yeah, go anywhere, UPS, go. I mean, really like what they're trying to say is like, and this is why they sound horrible when they talk about this issue. They said like minorities can't get, they don't have like transportation. Like what are you talking about?
I live in a small town and there's 4 UPS stores within walking distance.
It's just
Okay.
crazy. It's bigotry. They do the same thing when they say, "Oh, he's gonna." If they said
It's
this,
soft bigotry.
yeah,
Don't don't give it the big B bigotry. It's little b bigotry.
well, the big B bigotry is that some person on X posted, if Donald Trump gets rid of all the, if he like mass deports immigrants, which I don't think will happen because that just seems like that doesn't seem possible. But who's gonna pick your vegetables? And as this was like a post, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like that's pretty, that's offensive. I think to say
Yeah,
that,
that
but
was a very real thing. Like, because you're basically pretending that like minorities and stuff can't have other jobs than picking vegetables. Like, that's
yeah,
very much not true.
it's
Um,
like that's the bubble, right? Where like they don't never heard themselves talk to anybody outside of their own bubble. So they live in New York City, and the media. This is a media person, and so they just say like if you get rid of these immigrants, who's going to pick your vegetables? The fuck you.
Dude, I saw a video. A girl went from MSNBC, so Democrat stronghold, fucking news propaganda, goes into a barbershop, a black barbershop, and is doing like a Q&A with these guys there, and they were talking about mass deportation and like wanting to get rid of illegals and all this other stuff because the Democrats will spend more money on illegals than actually helping like other minorities who are here legally to like get ahead. So like yeah, sure, there's still kind of like want a handout kind of thing, but like they're seeing that they're spending all of these money on illegals, and they're like, what the fuck? Like, where's our help?
Yeah, that's a good point too. The handouts thing is interesting because it's not popular among anybody, and we're seeing like ramifications that like they're kind of under the surface, but it's like you don't have enough money for FEMA because you gave all the money away. You know what I mean. Like there's money that's being given to groups that aren't. It doesn't benefit like Americans, and that's not me. That's not benefiting. It's like you said, people in barbershops who are like we've been in. We've been dealing with this for like 50 years now since the Great New Deal, or not the Great New Deal. Yeah, I'll think of it later. But Great Society, since the Great Society, and it didn't work. The experiment failed, and I guess the Democrats think that they'll just be there forever, and it didn't. It flipped, and they're not going to know until after the election. But you're going to see working class unions. They're all switching over to the Republican
Right.
side.
Well, dude, a lot of what I'm seeing, like I said, with videos like that is specifically they were talking about Obama coming out and basically saying like, you should be ashamed for not voting for Kamala Harris basically just because of your skin color. And this one guy specifically said, he was like, I felt like the Democrats were trying to say, go get those N words in line.
Uh,
And, like, and so there is a contingent of blacks, apparently, I don't know this, it's just videos that I see, that feel that way, that they are trying to be shamed into voting for Democrats because historically that's who they voted for, right? um, but then you also see some weird shit out there like Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, obviously right wing mouthpieces, um, are out there on like college campuses, like trying to like debate these kids and stuff. And um they are saying like, well, Republicans don't help black people and all this other stuff, and like, why do you think that black people have not been able to increase like their generational wealth and all this other stuff? And they're like, because it's white privilege or whatever. And then Candace Owens actually says, and I would have to fact check this because I don't know that this is inherently true, but she said that black people were actually more prosperous under Jim Crow laws than post, what is that, Reconstructionism or whatever. Um, like, because like even before, because they didn't get the right to vote till what, like the 60s, right? So but she said that black people were actually more prosperous under those Jim Crow laws than not. And she's a little nutty for me. Like I said, I'm just telling you what she said, not that it's necessarily true. I don't know, but that narrative's out there too. So we'll
well,
see. I mean,
yeah, I'll be on the record just saying that I find Candace Owens to be like a despicable human being, and I wish she would be drummed out of polite society.
yeah, she's not great, but
But on
you
that
know, I
specific point, like, and yeah, they had the right to vote before that. But like, I see what you mean. Like, the Voting Rights Act came into in the '60s, and that's kind of what. But that was like all part of this Great Society thing, where like it didn't work, and it took a long time for it not to work before people started to realize. Um, I want to also mention that the Party of Norms, which are the Democrats, Tim Walz came out and said, like, in a private fundraiser in California, I think it was, he said, the Electoral College sucks, and like they want to stack the Supreme Court and all this other shit. And I just think that's like really telling because it'll be really interesting. It's possible that Trump gets the popular vote this time, and I would like for that talking point to go away because I actually respect the Electoral College. I think it's a good thing, not a bad thing, and I'm really tired of the left like denigrating that part of the Constitution and now, like, why don't we have a popular vote? And it's like it's the same reason why they want to get rid of the filibuster, which is like the only bulwark against the radical majority of whatever that is. And the founders designed all of this for a reason. There was a bulwark against that. So I just wanted to point out that Tim Walz said that, and I'm so tired of the left doing that. Like, you guys got
well,
you
so
gotta have to win you have to win in the system you're in.
they reinstituted the filibuster at some point, right? Like it had been abolished, and then they reinstituted it
Yes.
during the Bush administration
No. Well, I don't know the answer to
or
that
the Obama
actually.
administration. Yeah,
I
I'd have
think
to
it goes.
see.
I think it goes further back. It might go back to the 70s even. Um,
Oh, really? Okay.
but I don't know that for sure.
Um, but if Donald Trump wins the popular vote, I would imagine that's the first time a Republican has won the popular vote in,
It
I
would
don't
be
know,
20
gotta be,
years.
yeah, I was gonna say it's gotta be like 20, 30 years in
Yeah,
that
I
regard.
I think it would have been Bush who got maybe I can't remember, but now we're just talking about stuff we don't know about. I'm just pulling out like things that I maybe heard somewhere at some point. So don't hold me to any of this. But yeah, I think that would be really it would be a good wake up call for the Democrats. I think they need to like bring it back because whatever they're doing now is it's all crazy. It's all crazy. The
Do you
right's not
recall when the
perfect, but
last time Republicans had a supermajority?
I don't. It might have been Paul Ryan, uh, 20, not a super majority because Obama was in office. So yeah, actually, I don't know the answer to that. 2006, maybe.
I'd
Now
be
we're going.
interested to
We were
see.
in high school.
See, I don't know because if they had had a supermajority when Bush was in office, they probably would have done away with abortion and stuff at that time.
I don't think that was ever on the table because Roe was still a thing. So they really didn't have any ability to like get rid of abortion. Now they, I suppose, could have, a supermajority on the left could do that. Obviously, we've talked about that a couple episodes ago that they failed to do that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just like I've written my senators before about the Electoral College and about stacking the Supreme Court. So actually, that's when uh, I don't know. I just that's when I got like really engaged because that really pisses me off. The Supreme Court I don't think should be fucked with. Anyway, we're on a tangent. I went on a tangent.
It's okay. That's what a podcast is for, going on tangents.
Thomas Dewey is Hitler. Um, yeah. So what do you want to talk about now?
How about you explain that to our listeners here, that
Oh
Thomas
yeah.
Dewey is Hitler?
So
Because I think it's actually important considering the rhetoric today.
yeah, so Trump is being called Hitler by Hillary Clinton on MSNBC, and everybody's calling him a fascist. And in 1940, either 46 or 48, Terry Truman, who by the way I love, top 5 president, like I great president, um, called Thomas Dewey Hitler, and this was 2 years after Hitler had killed himself. So the left has been calling the right Hitler going all the way back. And they did it with Nixon as well, and Nixon had a lot of enemies, of course. But that's the context for that joke, and I just think it's really funny. It's like, oh, the same playbook. Everything under the
Right.
sun is old or whatever.
But it is. It everything that is old becomes new again. Yeah. I mean, it's very true. Um, and they have been doing this a long time. I mean, look at the first Trump presidency, calling him a fascist, calling him Hitler, calling Republicans Nazis. Remember, punching Nazis is like this huge thing, right?
Yeah,
But at some point, your words lose that kind of meaning. So, like, if you're calling everybody a Nazi just because you don't like them, it loses its actual luster. Like, it can't be forgotten that the Nazis were actually reprehensible, horrible, nasty people. Um, and you can't just sit here and carte blanche call people Nazis just because you disagree with what they say, um, because that's basically just how you end up being like, well, now nobody fucking cares if you're a Nazi because it's lost all of its meaning.
yeah.
So, you
I mean,
know,
I would say it's so intellectual. Like, maybe you should go back and like call somebody a Bolshevik or something. Like, I mean, read any other period of history. But they just go for the Nazi thing, and
right. And,
it
I think that's a disservice, especially for Democrats, really, to continue doing this because that moniker has not stuck to him. But they're going to continue going down that road because they think that rhetoric is going to help them. And historically, it really hasn't helped them in any capacity. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where that goes because they're just going to keep
Yeah,
going down this path, and um, it's not
Bush.
helpful
They
to
called Bush.
anybody.
They called Bush Hitler. They had put the little mustache on Bush, right? They called Mitt fucking Romney Hitler, the guy who had the most clean cut guy ever, who they love now, by the way. They called him Hitler too. So
Right. So, you know, Mitt Romney was Hitler, but until he hated Trump, and now he's, I'm pretty sure Dick Cheney was Hitler. Now that he's anti-Trump, the left loves him. I mean,
yeah,
they can't get out of their own fucking way. They just need absolutely anybody that they can get who's a fairly prominent Republican to say that they hate Trump. Um, like,
it's bad with Cheney.
they
Like Jon Stewart called out Tim Walz on it. He was like, "Dick Cheney, you guys are like bragging about that one." I mean, Dick Cheney was a really bad guy. I think back to Christian Bale, who played a Donald Trump-like character who was supposedly influenced by him in American Psycho, and played Dick Cheney in that movie as well. And you know, he's got to be really twisted right now because he's like kind of a lefty, and he's like, "Oh, I played these two characters, but now Cheney's endorsing Kamala Harris," and it's like it's kind of crazy actually. Like
well,
they've gone.
Christian Bale also played Dick Cheney.
That's what I'm saying. He played Dick Cheney, and it's like he's got to be the most twisted of all of them because he's like, oh no, this guy who I think in his acceptance speech he even said like, "Thank you to the devil for the inspiration," or whatever it was he said, because he won the Oscar that year, and and I think that's really funny now because the worst villain of the left, Dick Cheney, who I agree is like a horrible person, shot a fucking guy in the
Well,
face.
he did shoot a guy in the face. Yeah.
They're touting that endorsement. I don't think that's going to
Remember
work,
when?
guys.
So let's remember. Donald Trump said he could go and shoot somebody on
On Fifth
Fifth
Avenue,
Avenue
yeah.
and get away with it. Dick Cheney actually shot a guy, not on Fifth Avenue, but he actually shot a guy, and the guy he shot in the face apologized to Dick Cheney.
Yes.
Okay, so that is who you're fucking throwing your weight behind supporting you. Not to mention, I've been getting the most likes and engagement on Twitter I've ever received because I don't post that much on Twitter. But because like Occupy Democrats is like Beyonce, yes, gonna be at fucking Kamala Harris rally on Friday in Austin. Well, she went to a lot of Diddy parties, as did Kamala Harris. So let's fucking praise somebody who is best friends with somebody who is in prison for sex trafficking, um, just like Jeffrey Epstein. But right now it's not looking good for fucking Diddy and the people who were there. I mean, they have actually, unlike Epstein's client list, they've been releasing the people who go to Diddy parties, and there's a lot of fucking prominent people on there. Leonardo DiCaprio is on there, Beyonce, Jay-Z. I mean, Kamala Harris was on there. So let's not get that shit twisted, okay? Like,
Yeah.
it's not the same fucking thing to be like, oh, Beyonce's finally throwing her weight behind Kamala Harris. Well, lube up, baby, because that's what you're getting. Like, you're getting these people who support sex traffickers. So
Yeah, these endorsements have been interesting. Kamala got the biggest one of all because she got Taylor Swift, but I mean Taylor Swift's not out there like Beyonce
stumping
is.
for her, right?
Yeah. But they're
But you know
doing.
what she didn't get? She didn't get an endorsement from the Post. So
We had caught by briefly. The Washington Post refused to endorse, and so did the LA Times. And the people in those organizations were pissed off about it.
well, they're
Um,
two big liberal propaganda papers.
yeah. The Washington Post one is the big one because they I guess haven't they had a track record for a long time of not endorsing, and then they started doing it, and this year they're like, no, we're not going to do it. And I
But
I
you said this is like, I think you said this is, or you saw a tweet. This is like the first time they haven't endorsed somebody since 1988.
Yeah, yeah. When literally Hitler Reagan was in office. Okay, so I before I lose my thought, I wanted to mention something. 2016, Hillary Clinton is out there on the stump, and she gets that oh, what was that? The John Lennon song Imagine, but like it's being sung by celebrities, and Beyonce was out there with her, and It didn't
Wait,
work.
wait, didn't they also do that during 2020
COVID, yeah, I
during
think.
COVID? So it's like they used the same song over and over again.
Yeah, I can't even keep track of them. It might have been a different one. I don't know. But, they're Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce were out there with Hillary Clinton in 2016, and it's the
Also,
same
wasn't
fucking
John Lennon
playbook.
an actual communist?
Uh, yeah, he was not. His politics were really bad. Um, Great musician, but yeah. Anyway, and then you've got
I
Obama
hate
out
the
there now.
Beatles.
I love the Beatles. This podcast is full of controversial opinions. Obama's out there though, and he's like he's berating those people, and it's like, dude, Obama is not like Hope and Change 2008. He's old now, and he's dusty, and he's not interesting. He's definitely not interesting, and they're doing the same thing they did in 2016. I mean, why?
I
Ask yourself why was Joe Biden in campaigning in New Hampshire of all places? Like that's to me is a red flag. Like, something's wrong if you're campaigning in New Hampshire.
I think that Obama's issue ultimately is one of power. He's seeing the Democrats squander what he built, and
Yeah.
he did. Like let's not
Oh,
mince words here.
absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
he absolutely built up the Democratic Party into what it is now. And I think that he's absolutely seeing everything be unearthed now, which is must be horrible for him. I mean,
It's his
it,
legacy, right? Like when you're saying about his legacy covers everything. It covers the culture wars. It covers, you know, currently implemented DEI policies. He stirred up a lot of racial resentment by saying people like Michael Brown could have been his son, right? Like these were things that happened a long time ago, but it all kind of got seeded into everything. And
even though
now,
he doesn't have a son.
even though he doesn't have a son, and now you're kind of seeing that uh, come to fruition with everybody in the public rejecting the culture war shit. Whether or not his like legislative, whatever is intact, I don't know. He's got the Affordable Care Act. He nominated people to the Supreme Court, but yeah, it's really interesting to see him out there trying to like sell this, and it's like, dude, man, you're in the dustbin of history for like 2 generations. So
Well, arguably, the culture wars are what single handedly started ruining politics.
yeah,
As some people will say, it goes back to like the '90s during like the Clinton era and stuff like that.
maybe, yeah.
This like hardcore division, it started really showing up in the '90s in politics.
But now it's social
But the
media.
culture war, right? And the culture war is huge on social media. So you have to sit here and think that they're kind of one and the same. Like,
It kind of goes back
you
to
know,
our comments on TikTok. It's like, why are these people going on TikTok and commenting on what we think? It's because of the culture war. It's like, I got to make sure these guys know that I'm some random from somewhere, and they need to know that their fucking equipment sucks and their politics sucks. And it's like, that's culture war. Like, we don't give a fuck, but that's what it is.
no, I don't buy into whatever it is you're fucking selling, okay? Like I have my thoughts and opinions just as you do and other people do. You and I do not sit here and constantly agree on everything that we talk about on the
Especially fast food.
podcast. We have been at arms over many
At
things,
arms.
for
That's a little aggressive. I think we disagree. I don't think we go to battle, although we have before.
the record, I've choked Aaron once and broke his sunglasses. The sunglasses thing was kind of just a cherry on the top of choking him because it was a complete accident that I broke his sunglasses. But,
Yeah,
Aaron and I are people who, like, it doesn't matter our differences of opinion when it comes to politics, right? Because at the end of the day, that does not itself define our friendship in any capacity. It's just something that we talk about. We can be at odds with each other about whatever, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's politics. Like, it doesn't define my life. While we sit here and talk about it all the time on the podcast, and it's a big part of our lives, it does not inherently define who we are. And I think that's what people need to get back to. in their lives is like not letting politics define you. You're constantly seeing people be like, "Oh, I can't date a conservative, or I would never date a liberal, or whatever." I'll tell you, me and my wife, we do not necessarily talk about politics all the time. We do not see eye to eye on everything politically, for sure, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't take away from like my relationship with her or anything like that. A lot of my family are like pretty staunchly liberal.
I would say not
But
pretty, actually. I would say they are. But
I mean, there a bunch of them are, yeah. But I don't let that detract from my ability to have relationships with them, because politics does not define me. If it defines you as a person, you need to fucking reevaluate who you are as a person. Because if all that you care about is politics and you let that define you, then you have no depth. You
you're
need to get
projecting
out and like,
politics onto your
right,
life.
you need to fucking get a hobby or something, because like, you need to do something with your life that gets you away from politics. Like, I do a lot of different things that aren't like politics related. I do not let it define me. It's just something I do. It's something I talk about, um, you know, because I find it interesting, but it is not a defining piece of my life.
It is for a lot of people. All right, so that went by really fast. Jesus. Okay.
It did.
So let's get to some lighter items, perhaps. Are you caught up on the Penguin?
I am caught up on the Penguin.
I am as well.
Um, it's been fucking good, dude. I've
Thumbs up for me.
Colin Farrell, especially since you hated the Batman, Colin
I still do.
Farrell as the Penguin, it like he's doing for the Penguin, in my opinion. If you look at who's played the Penguin in the past, Danny DeVito.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone else has really played the Penguin unless you watched like that uh, Gotham show or whatever, which I did not.
Well, and then there was the old show from way back in the day, long before our
Right,
time.
but Colin Farrell's doing for the Penguin what Heath Ledger did for the Joker, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's a fair.
The Joker was Jack Nicholson, who was good, but it was very clowny, kind of thing. Whereas like Heath Ledger's Joker was very serious and dark. And I think them showing you how the Penguin became the Penguin and like how he came to power in Gotham has been a really good, cool thing to see.
Yeah, it's just a really cool thing to see, and
Right.
yeah, you're right.
Because
Like,
he's not this like kingpin, right? Like, as
not at
every time
all.
we've seen it, is he's this like villain, but he's not that yet. He's like a bottom low level henchman. Like, he drives a car for the daughter of the Falcone family. Like,
Yeah,
that's how he started.
yeah,
And it's like he's building up his empire. So it's really cool to see.
yeah, and he's not a dark figure in the show. He's actually kind of silly at times. He's not taken seriously by anybody, and that's been fun too because it's not like Heath Ledger was like an agent of chaos throughout the entire thing. Penguin certainly isn't that, but it's fun. I hope they kind of stick the landing because they've introduced so much lore, and I'm curious, now that they've established the lair. I won't say much more than that, but um, it'll be interesting to see how that all incorporates into the next Batman project.
Mm-hmm.
And
It is in like episode 4 was the best
awesome.
episode of the season, and he wasn't even in it. Like,
Yeah,
he was not even in it, really. He might have been in it for a few minutes, but Colin Farrell and the Penguin weren't even in it. It centers around that female character, and she's been phenomenal
she's great.
in that role. Um, for you, do you think there's going to be a second season?
That's a really good question. It sounds like it, based on the success of the show, I would say yes, but what do you think?
Batman comes out next year, I think.
I think
Maybe
no,
2025.
I think they just finished or they're still writing it actually.
So I would venture to guess that uh the Batman, like, I wonder if they have some kind of like foreknowledge of what's coming, like, for that script. Um and maybe they end off somewhere so that that script can pick up. Because as we know, like the Penguins pretty much picks up like right at the end of the Batman. So it'll be interesting to see how that maneuvers a little bit. I would think, in my opinion, if they do a second season, it would come out after the Batman 2 comes out.
Well, you could do a lot with the Penguin because he is an important villain in the Batman universe, but he in the show is still kind of like underground. Batman's not in the show at all. Like it's not that. So maybe there is some room for that. I don't know. I think I think Colin Farrell is the one who got the show in the first place, so he probably wants to
He
keep
did,
playing that
man.
character.
He did. He asked them. He's like, "I love this character. Would you guys do a show?" Like he asked them. He went to like HBO and was like, "I want to do a show about the Penguin." And they were like, "But you have." He said, "You have to get like the right writers and director." And I've seen him do some interviews with the girl that plays the Falcone girl.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember her first name.
It's
Um,
yeah.
it's escaping me, but uh, he was like, you have to get the right people. And in an interview with her, he was like, they nailed it, like absolutely nailed it. So
She is perfect in that she is she might be the best part of the show in my opinion. Colin Farrell is great too, but she has this element of crazy in the way she acts, and the way the show kind of depicts her backstory as like, yeah, she was kind of normal, and then they just kind of like fucked her up mentally, and now she's like reaping revenge based on what they did to her. I love that element. So they should do this, by
yeah,
the way.
she
Oh, go ahead.
no, she wasn't like this criminal like mastermind or anything like that, or even like close to the head of her family. And they did it to her. So like a lot of her story arc is that like her family doing this to her, to becoming who she is in the show, and it is a really interesting thing to watch.
And I continue to think, I rewatched the Batman, and my favorite part of the Batman was John Turturro's character, and he's still like so good. He's so evil.
I'm shocked he didn't come in for the show. Because his character from the movie is in the show, but
but
it's played by something strong, British
Mark
actor
Strong, I think
Mark
it's Mark
Strong, I
Strong.
think it is. Yeah,
Um, so I want to say, like, I think it'd be really interesting if they did this for other villains in the Batman universe who Batman has tons of obscure villains, but like I'm talking about, like I wouldn't mind seeing a Poison Ivy show like this. I wouldn't mind seeing a Calendar Man episode like show like this. Like if they could work and flesh out more of this version of Batman, I think that'd be really cool. Um, and in the movie, I think just failed to do that for me. But yeah,
so but now, did you dislike Robert Pattinson as Batman?
no, not at all. I think he's great.
I Yeah, I thought he was pretty good. There's just story points that you don't like about it, correct? Like, and
Well,
Paul Dano was great as well.
yeah, I have problems with. Okay, so this is gonna sound bad. People are gonna say like, oh, they could say anything.
You're sexist. I know
Uh,
exactly where you're going.
I'm sick of Catwoman. I really am. I just think that, and in the movie, when I rewatched it, I was like, oh my god, like it's even worse than I thought. Anytime she shows up on screen, the story just kind of goes, it just stops. And I'm just tired of that character.
Arguably, the best Catwoman was Michelle Pfeiffer.
I think so too, and I think that like even in the video games, like oh, you could play as Catwoman, and it's like I don't want to.
I don't want
It's
to.
just I'm over it. So I think that they should, in the next movie, I think they should not have a focus on that character at all. I wouldn't even put her in the movie, but I mean, maybe she fucks off to like Catwomanville or something. I don't know. Okay, I have a little show and tell as well. If we're done talking about, is there anything else? You saw Terrifier 3.
I did. Yes.
Did we
But
talk about that last time?
did you see Terrifier 3?
Not yet.
Then I don't want to talk about it yet.
Okay.
I would much rather make fun of you for wearing a Bubble Bobble shirt
It's one of the greatest video
than
games of all
anything
time.
else. No, it's not. Come
Yes,
on.
it is. Come on. Okay, so my show and tell today, I got two things for you. first thing is related to hockey. I don't know if I showed you this yet, so it might be the first time you've seen it. I have an autographed Stanley Cup final with the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers on it, signed by Matthew Tkachuk.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. And my
Did
other,
you win that out on auction, or like, how'd you acquire said piece?
I bought it. I just bought it. They have a on Fanatics, which by the way is a horrible experience to buy anything from. They have a bunch of autograph shit on there, so I'll probably get the Sergei Bobrovsky save from that one game where he kind of like reaches out. They have a couple autographs.
By the way, he is actually the fastest goaltender to ever win 400 games.
Big deal. Ever. Yeah. I mean, for a goalie who gets shit on a lot in our group chat, that is a pretty impressive stat. So
he's going Hall of Fame.
Oh.
Well, he used to be a Flyers goaltender, but
Well, you've had a lot of Panthers goaltenders in your day. The other one may require some explanation, but it is interesting. So this is called The Primevals on Blu-ray. It just came out. The studio that made it's called Dark Moon Studios or Full Moon Studios. They made the Puppet Master movies. That's what they're famous for. They did a lot of like B movies during the 80s. And this movie was actually completely filmed, but they didn't finish the stop motion. So it sat on the shelf and never came out. And then they just re-released it. People who worked on the original production came back to do the stop motion animation, and it took them about 8 years. They've been working on this for a long time. And they finished this movie that never came out, and they put it out. And it's pretty interesting just based on that backstory alone. So I watched it, and it wasn't great or anything, but the stop motion was awesome. And I just think that's really cool. Like, I can't believe they did that for, this thing that just like, it's just crazy that they did it. So.
Is it a horror movie?
No, it's, explorers go to the Antarctic to find out where they found this abominable snowman. Not abominable snowman. What's the other one? It's a big ape.
A Yeti.
A Yeti. Thank you. And they go to find out. They find the Yeti. They bring it back to like wherever, and they're like, it's been stuffed. It's dead already. But they want to find more of them, so they go to the Antarctic to find this thing, and then they end up going to an underground whatever, and then there's like aliens came, and they like built this like civilization, and they left, and then the aliens became like barbarians, and they turned into lizard people, and all this crazy shit. It's Yetis versus lizard people.
It sounds like it's right up the conspiracy theory corner alley, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know your thoughts on Yetis, but this movie it's not a great movie. But they restored it. It's pristine. It looks so clean. And the stop motion animation is so fucking cool. Like, I really love stop motion animation, but it's so hard to do and nobody does it anymore.
I don't have anything specific for show and tell, I don't think, but I did buy the Alien Blu-ray from Goodwill for like $3.
Cool.
So
that counts. Yeah,
and it's pristine. There's no scratches on it. Nothing.
That's awesome. I've got a bunch of movies in recently. I don't have much to add. But I'm
not really into physical media, so.
Well, you should be. This might be a good start, actually. Soon you can have a whole house full of physical media.
I already got a whole house full of other shit, so that's why I don't collect shit.
Okay, so we're 2 weeks into hockey, so let's close on that. What are your thoughts on the season so far? Any surprises?
I mean, the Colorado Avalanche kind of sucking to start was like a big surprise.
And for me, the same thing with the Bruins.
The Bruins are not very good right now. They're the most penalized team in the league. I must say, I think like Austin Matthews in Toronto not starting out super well. I have him in fantasy hockey, and I am kicking everyone's ass despite the fact that Austin Matthews isn't really scoring, including Aaron. I whooped his ass by like 50 points.
It's true.
and it's his first season, so I am excited about that. But yeah, I think that's definitely one of the biggest surprises. But they seem to be riding the ship more well lately.
They
So
are, and also the Oilers are kind of flat or started out flat, and the Minnesota Wild are not flat at all. They're doing quite well.
yeah, they're running on the back of some really, really good goaltending.
Oh,
I
he's
think
been
their
on
starting
fire.
goalie only let in like 6 goals
Gustafsson.
in like 7 games or something like that, or 6 games. So he's having a really, really good start to the season. So yeah,
Yeah, those are about my highlights. And any the teams in Pennsylvania sucking. No surprises there, really.
not really. I think the Flyers had a little bit of a higher expectation. The Penguins were expected to make the playoffs. It's not looking great right now for them.
No,
But the Flyers, they started out really well last year. They were in a playoff position until the final stretch of the season last season.
I think
They
it was
lost
like
like 9 of
four
11 of their final
four
games or
teams.
something.
Yeah, four teams were going to get in, but like only one got the spot. And
But I don't know if you've watched any of the Flyers games this year.
no,
The reason to watch is Matvei Mishkov. That kid is something else.
oh,
He's
okay.
phenomenal. Um, Not the fastest skater, but he seems to just get the job done on a consistent basis. I expect them to be a little bit better, but they shouldn't be a good team. The guy that they pay to be their first line center is playing like fourth line wing right now.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they are not the best team for sure. But that was to be expected in my opinion. But I always expect the Flyers to suck. So
Well, the Panthers for me have been what I expect, which is
pretty
Barkov
good.
got hurt. They're pretty
Yeah.
good without Barkov, and that matters. But they are a different team without Barkov, so I'm excited to get him back. But
Yeah, that kid Anton Lundell has been on fire,
yeah,
and
Sam Bennett too.
he really should be like their second line center. But they have Sam Bennett, and they have been in talks with Sam Bennett for an extension, which hurts me from a fantasy perspective because I don't want Lundell to remain the third line center. I want him to be their second line center for fantasy purposes. But I mean, he's showing day in and day out why he's in that role. I mean, he's already scored like, I don't know, a quarter of the points that he had all last season just in this first month of hockey. So
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch them. I mean, that's it happened last year too, but like the
they are
depth.
fun to watch, man. Their
Oh, they
opening game
are.
against the Bruins was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was such a good game to watch.
Yeah, I think that it just last year Kachuk was out, and they weathered the storm, so they're doing it again early in the season.
I think Vancouver sucking was like kind of a big surprise, really, to start the season too, because everybody had some higher expectations for them, but I think they overperformed their metrics from last year, and that's why they made the playoffs. Um, so I personally expected them to regress this season. So it's probably not that shocking for me, but it has been shocking to others.
Yeah, I would have thought that like the you would have had like the Winnipeg and those teams would be swapped for whatever reason, but
Dude, so in my fantasy hockey league that I'm in, that we do cap space requirements. Like I had Connor Hellebuck, who won the Vezina Trophy last year, well deserved, but I didn't keep him because we're in a keeper league. I didn't keep him, even though I probably should have, because I didn't trust Winnipeg. Because I really don't think that their defense is all that great,
yeah, I wouldn't say you
but
should, but
they're the only undefeated team left in hockey, and they're like 7 or 8-0. So
yeah, it's crazy. This isn't a football podcast, but my stupid Dolphins quarterback with 18 concussions is going to start here either this weekend or next weekend, and I don't know, man.
look, man, I've been through it. All right. Eric Lindros, who played for the Flyers, I hate him. I actually hate him more than Sidney Crosby. He had what I call baby head, and he got concussions constantly. It actually derailed his career. Now, when he was playing, he was one of the most dominant players in all of hockey. Um, but he just couldn't overcome the concussion issues, or else I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame, but he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, hands down, had he not had concussion issues. So,
Well,
but fuck him.
Tua is a top 5 quarterback when he's not running his head into fucking walls and shit. But yeah, it's possible. I mean, even in this last press conference, he was like, they're like, "What did you learn?" And he said, "The concussions are bad." And I'm like, "Okay, we're fucked." Like, this is your takeaway.
Dude, I hate Eric Lindros so much. Like, I went with a mutual friend of ours, Andy, to a Flyers game where they were inducting Eric Lindros into the Flyers Hall of Fame. Not the Hockey Hall of Fame, but the Flyers Hall of Fame. And, like, they were doing a speech, and, like, there was, like, this moment of silence where, it wasn't a moment of silence that was, like, disrespectful if you say anything. It was just, like, this silent moment. And out of nowhere, you just hear me going, "You fucking suck!" And dude, I was 15 rows off the ice, like you could hear it throughout the whole arena. It was just like, "You fucking suck!"
I
I was
love
like
that.
the only one who thinks that, but it was like 17,000 or 18,000 people versus me. But whatever.
Well, that's the toxic Brad that I love. So, you petty bastard. Uh, shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's a long
Okay.
one.
Yeah, we went a little long, but that's okay. We had a lot to discuss.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were off for like almost 2 weeks. So
And no foreign policy discussion. We made it through a whole episode without ever talking about anything overseas. It's a miracle.
finally.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll catch you later, and I'll get the episode up.
See you, buddy.
Bye.